Hi, welcome to this video. So I'm bringing you a very special video today. So it's all about the feet, something that's quite sort of prominent in my life, I guess. Basically, I started getting a bunion from the age of 16, and I've been using yoga in the past few years to help kind of reduce that, not only the inflammation around the joint, but also the actual pain of the bunion itself. So that's helped me in all aspects of my life, and I'm still in the process of kind of trying to reduce it even more, I guess, and just kind of using different techniques, trying to create more dexterity in the toes in order to help get a more stable balance. So something that's quite sort of prominent in our society is that from a child, basically the toes are the widest part of your foot. So when you look at a pair of adult shoes, what you tend to get is that rounding in where the toes are. So it comes to like a nice narrow, slim part of the top. So probably that looks more aesthetically pleasing, more streamlined. But actually that should be, the toe box part of the shoe should be the widest part of the shoe. So it doesn't really make sense to me why shoes are made so that they don't fit our feet, basically, that we have to fit our feet into the shoes. And there's things that you can do to start to re-spread your toes. So what can happen is, as the foot starts to become narrower where the toes are, straight away you can sort of see that lovely shape that I've got going on here. The bunion might start to appear if you're squeezing them into small shoes. Also the weight distribution, so you want to be able to have your toes to be able to fan out and help to create that stability into the whole of the foot. And that kind of takes more pressure into the rest of the foot. So what can also happen is the arches start to become weaker, especially with all this sort of reinforcement and arch support in shoes. And then also the muscles and the ligaments are not really utilised that much. So the feet essentially become lazier. And that also has the knock-on effect to the ankle. So we've got, a lot of different muscles, different bone structures to help stabilise in the ankle. If we're using shoes that are full of this kind of like support, padding, various sort of technologies, especially in sports shoes, to try and basically not allow the foot to do the job by itself. So you might also want to think about wearing what are known as like barefoot shoes, or they call them zero something shoes as well. So basically meaning that you've got a very thin layer between you and the floor. Usually this layer is a very hard wearing, flexible kind of rubber material that is usually quite impermeable, but also waterproof. So you might want to look at starting to use something like that. But I'm going to show you some tips and tricks you can do maybe before the yoga practice, so you've got that real awareness in your feet to take throughout the practice, or something that you might want to do to kind of help with general foot pain, or just basically you want to strengthen your arches and you want to get that support back into your feet. You want to get the muscles being utilised and the dexterity into the toes. So without further ado, let's get started. What you'll need is a TheraBand. So I'm just using a quite thin TheraBand for this. And also a tennis ball. And we'll get started on our backs. So if you just come to lie down. So you're just going to start off by actually grounding through your feet. So if you lift the toes and then spread the toes nice and wide.
So you almost can just start to connect the mind to the feet. You might even imagine as you begin to extend the breathing that you can breathe all the way to the tips of the toes so that our prana network is connected throughout the whole body. I'm just grounding through the lower back. Okay, so I'm going to begin with the TheraBand. If you keep your left foot where it is, and then bring the TheraBand around the right padded part of the toes. So I'm going to have just a single layer of the TheraBand here, so we don't want to put sort of too much pressure. And then going to hold the TheraBand. So I want you to imagine that you can actually step that foot onto the ceiling. So the heel is lifting up, and then you're activating through the arch and the four corners of the feet. And then putting a little bit of pressure down. So you can imagine that the thigh is slightly rolling out to the side, and then you're getting that inward spiral from the outer knee towards the inner heel. So you're just going to come to press the toes up towards the ceiling. So basically you're pointing the foot with the resistance of the band, and then exhale, bringing the toes back towards the face. So inhale to press away, and exhaling down. Inhale to lift up. You can see how much the calf muscle is using and changing shape here, so it's quite interesting. Inhale to press up, and exhaling away, and then lifting the foot up and coming back to the center. So now we're going to rotate the foot. So I'm just going to show you with my hand. We're going to rotate over to the right hand side with the foot, and then back to the center, and then over to the left. So you might start to feel some sensations into that outer ankle, I know I do, and then up towards the shin. And then taking it back to the center, over to the right, maybe some sensations through the inner ankle. So I'm just going to take that movement a few more times, try and keep the leg stable, grounding through the back of the pelvis. And then coming back to the center. And then just gently come to release the TheraBand off that foot. So I'm starting to get a few kind of tingling sensations here actually. You can definitely feel the blood sort of reversing its flow. I'm going to bend that knee and come into that figure of four pose. So this is also a great one for activating the feet. So if you spread the toes really wide, you want to feel like the arch is coming back towards your calf muscle. So you might stay here and work on bringing the knee towards the front of the room, or you might come to interlace your hands behind the left thigh. So I'm just going to take some really nice long deep breaths. Take another deep breath, and then exhale, gently releasing the foot down if you've lifted, and come back to the center. And just take some windscreen wipers through the legs, allowing that movement through the pelvis. Okay, so coming back. And then we'll take the same over to the other side. So starting with the left foot now. So just taking that slight rotation out of the thigh and the inward rotation with the calf. So it's a very, very micro movement. Press the heel up towards the ceiling, perhaps drawing the strap slightly closer towards the body. Make sure that you're not sort of creating any tension in the shoulders, so that you can just take the hands anywhere you wish onto the band, allow a little bit more room for the arms to come down. So breathing nice and deeply, try and imagine the breath travelling all the way to the heel, through the arch of the foot and then to the toes. So that nice long line of energy through the back of the leg. So you can also see here how much basically if there's problems with your ankle or sort of tightness around the ankle joint, that it might affect the stability into the knee if the ankle is weak. Or if we've got that kind of blockage or something happening in to the shin and into the calf muscle. So we want to have that lovely supply of blood going all the way to the toes. So you're just coming to point out through the toes now. And then exhale, bringing the toes back to flex. Inhale to point. Exhaling to flex. Inhaling to point. Exhaling to flex. Inhaling to point. And exhaling down. So deep breath, once again pressing the foot away and then coming back down. So I'm just going to start to move that foot from side to side. So you might take a few extra breaths on one side, especially if you've got that lovely kind of stretch coming into the shin. It can be quite nice. So keeping that healthy rotation through the ankle, helping once again with the blood flow to come to the foot. One more breath, and then gently releasing that strap away. Okay, coming to that figure of 4 on this side, so maybe staying here and just finding that flexion through the ankle and the spread of the toes. And maybe coming to interlace your hands behind the right thigh as you draw it into the chest. So now both sets of toes really active, arches lifted, flexion through the foot. Okay, so coming back, I'm just going to make your way up to seated, so any way you wish to come up. Okay, so we're straight away going to come over, so this is now some seated things that you can do. I'm going to come into a toe squat. So what you want to make sure is that even the small toe is being tucked under here. So the whole of the foot is being utilised. And you sit back on towards the heels. So just feeling into the foot here. So it can be quite intense, especially if you haven't really done any footwork in a very long time. You know, you can get a little bit stagnant in the toes, they can become a little bit less flexible. So you might start to bring the weight off a little bit. So even for me, I can feel this in my right bunion
I've just noticed, I think since the heat has sort of come up the past few days, that it's started to become a little bit unhappy, maybe because I've worn flip-flops a few times. It hasn't really been helping it, so just breathing nice and deeply. Maybe you're wanting to take the weight back. So it goes both ways. You might want to bring the hands to connect and then bring the weight so it comes even more onto the toes. And then just releasing the hands down. You take the tops of the feet away and then just pat through the tops of the feet. Okay, so now with the tops of the feet down, just coming to sit back onto the heels. If you press the palms towards the knees, and you're going to lift up onto the tops of the feet. So you're rolling, creating that lovely stretch into the front of the shins. Also quite intense perhaps onto the tops of the toes, you can always ease off. And then releasing down. So that's another place that you can kind of get quite stiff, is into the front of your ankles. So also that blood channel can sometimes, you know, not flow as freely as it might be able to. So we're just going to switch between the two. So we're going to come to tuck the toes. Remembering to take any variation. If you want to take the weight off, bringing the fingertips forward, perhaps bending the elbows. If you want to bring a little bit more intensity, then come in to bring the weight back. So at the same time, we're slightly rolling the pelvis under to get that length into the lumbar. And then shifting the weight forward, untucking the toes, pressing into the fingertips and lifting up. Coming down, tucking the toes. And back, so any variation. Coming forward, untucking the toes and lifting up. Okay, so releasing down. So you're welcome to take a few more of those if you'd like to, or maybe if you're just starting out, I would just take a few to begin with and ease off so that the body can gradually start to open up rather than being forced to open up. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is grab your tennis ball. So we'll make our way up to standing. Another great way to get up to standing is actually to tuck the toes and make your way into that toe squat. And then slowly come all the way up and then release the heels down. Okay, so we're going to take the tennis ball underneath your right foot. So the place that feels the nicest, especially if you have any problems with plantar fasciitis or have done in the past, is to roll under the arch of the foot. It just feels amazing, bringing a lot more, not only awareness, but blood flow and massaging into that fascia tissue. So one thing that is really going to help is actually strengthening your arches. So if you do have or have tendencies to suffer with the plantar fasciitis, is to not only sort of try and release it, but also to strengthen the arch of the foot. And with the whole sort of shoe thing that I was talking about earlier, it doesn't really promote healthy arches which are active by themselves. So there's a lot of arch support. We want to allow the body to actually start to have its own connection to those muscles
its own support within its arches without relying on external kind of forces. So you're also going to roll under the heel. So this is a bit more tricky, it's like a ball on a ball. At the same time, if you can, try and keep the awareness so it's more in the room rather than just looking down at your foot whilst you're doing this. So bring that wider awareness is also a nice trick to help with that stability and balance in the mind. And we'll take the ball underneath the balls of the toes. And then onto the toes themselves. So you're going to kind of wrap the toes around the ball of the foot. Okay, so you might even feel here how much the main arch of the foot, so the medial arch, is starting to engage, but also that arch underneath the toes themselves. So there are 3 arches within the foot. Okay, so we'll come over to the other side. If you want to just take a moment just to kind of feel between the 2 sides. Notice how one side feels without kind of looking for any differences. So just observing. And I'll come over to the other side. So just beginning with the arch, but then also over to the outer arch of the edge of the foot. Trying to bring the awareness into the wider room. So this is something you can do pretty much every day, really. It's particularly great if you spend a long time on your feet. So, you know, walking on your feet a lot at work, or you've had a long day, perhaps you've been at an event. It's also great if you do a lot of walking. Okay, so we'll now take it to the heel. So a little bit more tricky, that ball on ball. You might even take the toes just to touch down whilst you do this. Okay. And then coming to the balls of the feet. So if you can, try and put a little bit of weight on underneath onto the tennis ball. And then under the toes. So just fanning out the toes and trying to hug onto the tennis ball. Maybe putting a bit of weight down here as well. Okay, so I'm just going to release that to one side. Taking a moment once again just to feel between the 2 legs. How does the breath feel? How do the feet feel? And we'll just come to lift the toes and create that spread through the toes. Okay, so what you can do in standing is I'm going to lift all the toes of the right foot and then try and just bring the big toe down to the ground. So really notice what part of the foot is activating as you're taking the big toe down? How does the weight feel on that foot? Okay, so lifting the big toe, try and just take the small toe side down to the foot. Once again, see where the muscles are activating, what is happening into the foot as a whole, where's the stability. And then lifting that small toe, see if you can bring the big toe down as well as the small toe. So when I do this in my class, most people laugh because it's quite a tricky thing to be able to do, and I think that a lot of it can be to do with the brain as well. So it's almost like the brain has to reconnect with the toes individually in order to be able to control them individually. So don't worry if you can't do it the first time, just seeing what happens. And then we'll keep that spread between those 3 middle toes as you take them down to the ground. So same for the other side. So I'm going to lift up all the toes. At the same time, try and press down through the balls of the foot. I'm going to take just the big toe down and see how that feels. So for me personally, I can feel the arch of my foot. It feels I don't even know how to explain the sensation, but it does feel like it's kind of re-firing up into the arch of the foot, which is actually a pretty good feeling. Okay, so lifting the big toe, taking the small toe side down. Once again, just observing what is going on with the stability, with the weight distribution between the four corners of your feet. And then coming to lift that toe. So I'm going to try and bring the big toe and the small toe side down. Great. Also, I find it really hard to spread my toes without spreading my fingers at the same time. There seems to be some sort of correlation between the brain and the toes, and the fingers and the toes with the brain. So okay, great. So taking the middle 3 down, keeping that small space in between the toes. Wow, so really just noticing how the feet feel. So you might suddenly feel that real connection with the feet, that real sense of stability. It's really, it's a great feeling to feel extremely grounded through the physical body. And then this can translate into all aspects of your practice. So the feet are vitally important for all our standing postures, our warriors, our lunges, Tadasana, downward dog, you name it. As you go through the kind of more standing and perhaps flowing part of the sequence, the feet are really important. This is, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's not only going to impact on your actual yoga practice. Once you bring that awareness there, you might start to notice your feet and your ankles and how perhaps, you know, if that's affecting your knees or your hips in some way. So that translates further up the body. And we can start to kind of make some changes and stuff in our everyday life in order to help our feet activate, to perhaps feel more grounded, maybe take our shoes off when walking on the grass outside, and be able to bring a lot more foot health. So that's going to help with all different types of exercise practices, as well as when you get older, your feet will be in much better shape to support you. So the last thing that I was going to mention that I think is a really good thing to do, again at the end of the day, amazing, is legs up the wall. So basically
I'm not going to show you this one, but you're going to come to a wall and you're going to put your legs vertically up it with your torso lying flat. So you create that kind of 90-degree shape with the body. You can always take a pillow underneath the lower back, just make sure that you're having that natural curvature around where the kidneys are to help sort of have a nice flow of energy through that area. You might flex out through your feet, or you might point the feet, you might go between the two, and just allow the blood to reverse in its direction. So it's a very sort of restorative inversion for the body, and it's so good for lymphatic drainage system of the body. So particularly in the summer, when your ankles and your feet might become a lot more swollen when you get hotter, so like water retention in the legs, it just helps to allow them to drain. And that's not the only benefit, also detoxifying the body. We're allowing the circulation of blood coming back to the brain, the thyroid stimulation, all the normal inversion benefits. Okay, so I hope this helps you in some way. I know I've talked quite a lot today. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, namaste.